What's up, everyone? Today we're continuing the talk about flexibility training, and we are really talking about how much you should stretch. This is something that a lot of people don't understand, and most people are getting this wrong. People think that the more you stretch, the quicker you'll get flexible, but we're going to demystify that.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.
What's up, tribe? Yani here. Across the table I got Rad. Phil is on hiatus today, but we got Richie behind the mixers, so all is well. Together we are Unity Gym and the Unified Movement System. Remember, guys, if you want to learn a little bit more about how we turn driven people into athletes, you can learn all of the biggest insights that we've discovered over the last 3 decades of our own training. In our blueprints, we have a flexibility, strength, and nutrition blueprint, and we're about to launch a at-home workouts blueprint and a motivation blueprint. What's up, Rad?
Oh, not much, This is a good one for me. This is because this whole talk is the topic today was one of the biggest inspirations behind creating the Mobility Masterclass version 2, is the amount that you do stretching, and it's something that I've learnt a lot about in recent times, and more is not always the answer.
Yeah, that's right. So to build a bit of context, we should share our experience. Rad and I, for those of you who don't know us or who are new to the group or who may be new to the podcast or new to the YouTube channel, we weren't always into flexibility training. Rad has always had a little bit more of a history of flexibility training to me because of his martial arts, but you certainly wouldn't have considered him flexible 10 years ago. He was probably
5
more
years ago.
5 years, yeah.
5 years
he was
ago,
probably always a little bit more flexible than the average person, but he wasn't super flexible. He used to have insanely tight hip flexors and a few areas of the body that were problematic, like most people do. But myself definitely would be considered unflexible. I used to struggle to touch my toes only a few years ago, and we got to a point in our training where I was very much inspired by bodybuilding initially. Originally, I was a boxer and played a bit of soccer and rugby league, and then I got inspired by bodybuilding because I was quite skinny and trained like a bodybuilder, really beat myself up. Rad sort of had a bit of a hiatus from his martial arts training, went to the army, and really came out quite bruised and battered because he had aggravated an underlying issue in his back that was quite bad. And we both sort of met in the middle, sort of wondering how we could make ourselves feel a bit better, because I had gained a lot of muscle mass, but at the expense of my performance. I suffered quite a severe injury on the soccer field, and we were just a mess, really. And so we sort of thought, how can we do this a bit better to make ourselves feel a bit better? And that's where the Unified Movement System was sort of born, coming together with Richard as well. We watched our performance start to increase as our flexibility increased, and we thought, wow, there's definitely something in this. And when you try something, when you're doing something new and you're learning on the fly with your own experiences and doing your own research, you tend to just go at it as hard as you possibly can. And we all want results as quickly as possible. And the flexibility pathway is not linear, which makes it even harder. You get this urge to just do it more, stretch more, stretch harder, But what we didn't know in the early days was that flexibility training, stretching, is a load mechanism for the muscles and for the body, for the passive structures, the tendons, the ligaments. And therefore, stretching is very much has a response in the body like strength training. It leaves you with DOMs, and it can leave you. You can overstretch. You can just like you can overtrain, just like you can overlift. And you can actually stifle the progress by doing so. And it took us, quite a few years to figure out how that sort of works and how much you can really affect your progress by overdoing it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's, the best example that I can think of for personally is that when I can remember this really clearly. It was about 5 or 6 years ago when my journey into the flexibility, really taking it seriously with flexibility, was that I went through this whole process in my early to mid 30s when I got out of the army and we were training again and we were starting a business, and I started to really question whether I had it in me to put the work in to get the results that I wanted. For the first time in my life, I was more aware of what I needed to do to get what I wanted. I didn't just have these lofty goals and thinking I just want to get that. I became really aware of, wow, this is how much work it's going to take for me to get there. This is not something that I can approach from maybe some weeks I'll work for it and maybe other weeks I won't. And, I realized how consistent I needed to be and what I needed to do. And I went through this whole process of working out whether I was willing to do that. I was getting older and my body was very stiff and sore when I got out of the army. But I made the decision pretty quickly that I did want to. The way that I framed it and approached it turned on its head real quick, and I started to think, well, Jesus, I'm only in my mid 30s. I'm not old at all. I've got a lot of life ahead of me, and I don't want to be. I didn't want to be one of those people that was a has-been that always showed people pictures of what they used to be able to do or talk about. But I wanted to be somebody that could do it.
It's understandable though, because you start.
It's really understandable.
Mid 30s mark, even early 30s, you start to feel the mileage. At least for me. I started to feel the mileage for the first time.
Yeah, I did too.
And I had, started to think, shit, I probably should have paid a bit more attention to taking care of my body. Yep. And look, Rad and I were, we had a period in our 20s and our teenage years where we ate Maccas and put all the wrong food into our body and all that, like most people, and drugs and alcohol.
Abused ourselves.
But from late 20s on, we started to really focus on cleaning things up and walk the walk.
But I didn't even really get serious until I was in my early to mid 30s. I still wasn't serious until.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, definitely. Not serious.
Yeah.
I was half.
Yeah.
I was half in and half out.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, and I remember clicking over to 30, 31, 32, and I started to feel like, whoa, things are feeling different.
It was exactly the same age.
Harder to lose weight. If I'd gone on a vacation and just hit the beers or something like that for a while and put on a few kilos. I remember Kalisha and I were meant to go snowboarding. We found out that she was pregnant with our first child, and we had to cancel our snowboarding trip to Japan, and we decided last minute just to go on a cruise because we needed a vacation. We'd geared up in our heads that we were having a 2-week vacation, so we went on a cruise. We had a client in the gym who worked for Carnival, and he said, "Man, I'll hook you up, family and friends. Give you a real pimp room, everything, and whatever." And it made sense because Kalisha was pregnant. We couldn't do anything too crazy, and we just ate, and I drank a bit. She didn't, of course, because she was pregnant, but we just ate and sat on our asses and came back, and I was like 8 kilos heavier. And I was like, how did I put on 8 kilos? I mean, a lot of it's fluid retention, but there was definitely some weight there, some fat there that I'd gained in only about 3 weeks. And it took me ages to get rid of that weight. And that was the real turning point for me, just thinking, wow, in the past, I would have just come into the gym, flogged myself, and within a few weeks, that would be gone,
Well, let's keep it on track with flexibility. And I'll continue my story, which was that when I did I made a decision when I was, I can't remember if I was 36 or 37. It was about that time. When I said to myself, I'm going to become flexible. I've wanted to be flexible my whole life. When I did martial arts, I wanted to, and I never achieved it. I'm going to do it now. I'm going to do the work. And when I started, I did other stretches, of course, but my benchmark was the middle splits. I wanted to be able to do the middle splits. I'd never been able to do it before, and I wanted to be able to do it. And I was doing it 5 days a week, and I was basically just really doing a lot of volume. Like the only thing I'd learnt about was active stretching and passive stretching. So I was doing loaded middle splits, but there was no programming to it or anything. I was really just doing a lot of volume. And I injured myself a lot. I tore my adductors many, many, many times, and they were just minor tears, but it's the tear that you go, oh, that's a bit sore, and then you try to stretch the next day and you can't even go to 70% of where you were the day before. Yep. And then you try to push it and then it gets worse, and then you can't stretch at all in the middle splits for anywhere from 2 weeks to 6 weeks was my experience. And that process happened for a couple of years. And then I started to learn more about programming for flexibility, and I started to do a little bit more of a balanced approach by training different parts of the body, and that's where I had my first big breakthrough, when I started to even out the work that I was putting into my glutes and hamstrings and front splits and all that and back bridge. But now when I do the middle splits, I only do it 1 day a week. That's it. One day, and that I'll clarify on that. I still do the 18-minute mobility routine, which is what we've renamed the 18-minute stretching routine version 2, for those of you that just got it. If I've had a bunch of people say, I can't see the 18-minute stretching routine version 2, it's because I renamed it, because that's a more accurate description of what it is, and I wanted to get off the bat with that. Anyway, so in the 18-minute mobility routine that I do daily, I do the middle splits, but I don't go, all I do is go to where's comfortable and sit there for a minute, and that's it. What I mean is I only train the middle splits to try and get better at it once a week. And if you see me when I train the middle splits, it is a full-on workout, man.
Yeah.
It is like,
intense.
it's like I do all these different exercises loaded to lead up to the middle splits. There's sweat. It's not a Zen moment. And then when I actually do the middle splits at the end, I'm doing like, feet elevated, straddle up, deficits, loaded with weight. Like it's a full on workout. I only do that once a week.
Yeah.
And I get better results from that than when I was doing it 5 days a week.
And this is a really big, I think, misconception, proven, furnished by the amount of trolls we get on social media commenting negatively on posts or workouts where we say you should only train a flexibility movement once a week.
Yeah.
And first and foremost, is really important for people to understand that training for flexibility and training for mobility in that movement are two very different things. And what Rad just said there, doing the 18-minute mobility routine to maintain and also solidify the flexibility gains that he's achieved in his workout for that, are two very different things. And you do them at different frequencies, and of course, much different intensities. And to reinforce what Rad just said, the effort and intensity that goes into a flexibility workout to gain flexibility is no different to a strength workout. It is, you are pushing it hard, and you should, the dosage and the intensity and the volume is very, very important, just like a strength workout. You can't you got to avoid overdoing it. You got to avoid stifling. Remember, the concept of flexibility training, the science behind it, the actual adaptation that we spoke about on Tuesday. If you missed that show, I urge you to go back and watch the science behind stretching. If you push too hard, you stifle the process. You have the complete opposite effect to what you're going for in your flexibility training, And we get into all these, we get these trolls all the time saying this is absolute nonsense. You can't get flexible only training once a week, Now, first and foremost, I don't think they understand what we mean by training. I don't think people get the idea that, training is intense and maintaining is different,
Well, but it's not just that. Like, if you like the middle splits workouts that I do, and the workouts that we have in the, that I'm writing in the Mobility Masterclass version 2, and even from version 1, if you did it without anything else, and all you did was that one workout, and you did not stop, it would still take you about 40 minutes. No one does that. Most people would probably do it in about an hour. So if you add it onto your strength training, like what we do, it takes an hour and a half to 2 hours. That's just the middle splits.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? Do that? When are you going to do your front splits? If you do that, when are you going to do your back bridge? Like it takes that long to do a workout on the one flexibility movement. So the idea is that you really go for it, and just like you would, like you couldn't say, I'm going to train my chest and my back and my arms and my legs and my deadlift and my abs.
Some people do, and they get shit results.
Yeah, they do. I mean, look, for a beginner, for an absolute beginner off the bat, you can do that. You can train all over body. But the reason why that works is because a beginner responds very poorly to high volume.
Yeah.
Beginners respond really well to low volume in strength training, And if you give them too much volume, they can't walk the next day.
Yeah.
So that's why it works really well for a beginner. But
and that's probably a really important insight. To point out. The different stages of your training age, which refers to your experience, how long you've been training consistently for under these protocols, under these conditions, that plays a huge role in how you're going to respond to different programs. You can't give a professional athlete's program to an absolute beginner, and vice versa. The athlete won't adapt at all to a complete beginner's program. And so you need to take that into consideration too. So people that are sitting there going, oh, well, I'm getting great results doing the 18-minute mobility routine every day. Yeah, absolutely. If you're at that level, it's going to produce amazing results, and it did for us.
And that's a mobility routine as well, which we'll talk about the difference in just a sec.
Yeah.
Do you want to? We'll give a couple of shout outs
Yeah,
here.
absolutely.
So if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, please just give a little hi and where you're watching from so we can give you a shout out. Please do, because I can see we've got a lot of people on the stream here. So Vinny Brown is saying great content this week, guys. Thanks a lot, Vinny. That's awesome. Lee Clements is saying good morning all, here to learn a bit more. Dave Clark saying hi all. Greg Gillespie's on here saying hi, Yani and Rad. And then Lee Clements is saying, so mobility daily and flexibility weekly. Yes and no. Mobility daily, absolutely. And it's really important to wrap your head around this. I know that even when I explain this simply, people still have a lot of questions, but I'm going to explain it as simply as I can. Mobility is an umbrella term for taking your joints through full range of motion. So doing a squat with a barbell, if you go ass to grass, even though you do it as a strength movement, it is mobility training, okay?
Yeah.
Doing an overhead press, if you lock out your shoulders in full flexion above your head and push your head forward as you do it, it is mobility. If you did a bicep curl where you're leaning back on a 45 or a 30-degree bench and you let your arms go as far back into extension as they can and do curls, that you're training mobility there as well. But at the same token, what we refer to as mobility training in the UMS system, when we say do some mobility daily, something like the 360 hip mobility, something like just going down into a squat and wiggling your hips around.
Yeah, an air squat.
Basically just
our
taking
squat routine. That's a great mobility routine.
That's right.
Yeah.
Taking your joints through the full range of motion, which is why at the end of the 18-minute mobility routine, I do the front splits, middle splits, pancake, pike, and back bridge just once, not trying to push and get better at it, just trying to take my body to the end of its range of motion, just to keep it there. You know, it's use it or lose it, right? So that's mobility training. Flexibility training is doing sets and reps with the goal to increase your mobility. It's done at a much higher level intensity, and it is done in a way that fatigues you. So another way to describe, a good way to use mobility training is a warm-up. We don't do any stretching in our warm-ups. If you do the UMS warm-up or the ultimate warm-up routine that we've got, that a lot of our listeners have got, that's all mobility training. Okay, it's not stretching, it's not flexibility training. But if you do what we do in the mobility masterclass or in the stretches between the sets that we do in the UMS online coaching, that's all flexibility training, because you're doing multiple sets of the same movement with the goal to increase your range of motion, to increase mobility. And when you do that, Lee, not flexibility weekly, that's not the right way. I think most movements I like to do twice a week, except the middle splits. The middle splits is just like the adductors are really small muscles and they can get really overloaded. And I've just found from my coaches that when they've coached me on the right dose, that we got down to one session a week and I got better results than when I was doing it more than that.
Yeah, there's a lot of passive structures that the middle splits put under a lot of strain and stress, because for instance, to give you an example, the knee joint is not really designed to take load laterally like that. And the passive structures, the ligaments and the tendons in there get loaded heavily when you're doing middle splits training. Yeah. And so you need time for those passive structures to recover. There's also other elements in the hip that get put under a lot of stress and strain when you're doing mobility training. There's different shapes of the pelvis, the pitch of the acetabulum, which is the socket that takes the femur into it. All these different little nuances affect your middle splits. And, you know, you can put a lot of stress and strain on the passive structures in the hip as well. So it's just the one that we tend to, we have found that you get better results if you only do once a week.
And also, from personal experience, the only injuries, I'm trying to think if I've ever injured myself from flexibility training in anything that wasn't the middle splits, and I don't think I have. I think the only injuries that I've personally sustained have been adductor tears from my middle splits training. I don't think I've ever really injured my hamstrings or lower back or calves or anything from my pike training. I don't think I've ever done my hip flexors from front splits.
Your knee from internal rotation.
Oh, my knee. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, my knee. Yeah, and that's why I've stopped. That's why I've removed internal rotation training from all of the programs. I still think that the 4-point stretch that we do in the loaded stretching class is a good thing to do, but it's not really a stretch. It's more of an internal rotation strengthening movement. I still think
primer.
Yeah, it's a primer. I still think it's a really good exercise to do. I just was trying to force it. That was a big lesson for me. I was trying to force progression because I wasn't going, and I didn't know it back then. That's how I learnt about FAI hip. I didn't even know that I had FAI hip. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know that it prevented internal rotation, so I tried to force something that my body was never going to go to, and I hurt myself.
Yeah, and that's that's a really big insight. And Phil, I know that Phil would be banging this drum if he was on the podcast with us. You do have to take into consideration that there are body parts that will potentially interfere with your stretch looking identical to Rad's stretch or my stretch or someone else that you see on Instagram that posts a photo, and there are some people that just won't be able to achieve the perfect position because their joints just don't really allow it, And so it's just like calisthenics, flexibility training is a very personal journey for everybody, and it's a process of self-discovery. You've got to work around your limitations, and you've got to sort of maximize or I can't remember the word I'm thinking of here. You've got to make the best use of your strengths,
Yeah, for sure.
We've got a couple of people here asking questions. Lee Clemens, doing foundations at the moment and stretches are great. Interesting stuff from Diane Norbury. So much to learn. I'm so glad to have this knowledge. Thanks very much, Diane. Jodie Buttle saying she's back from Queensland. Get your butt in here.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, look, guys, I think the key insight from today is that the optimal dosage is critical, and everybody responds differently, What I've gone through phases with my training where I've done certain things twice a week, like on Monday and Thursday, and I found that I was always sore, and I felt like I always had these flexibility DOMs. And so I backed off some of the exercises. So even if you've got one of our masterclasses, like the Mobility Masterclass or the Mobility Masterclass version 2 that we're going to release tomorrow, or the press to handstand masterclass has a lot of flexibility training in it, a lot of compression training. Even if the program says you should do it twice a week, I'll rephrase that. Even if the program has 2 days a week of doing the same thing, you have to see how that works for your body. And if you find that it's causing you to be in constant DOMs and you're not recovering properly, like you should be fully recovered when you do that next workout on the same body part. And if you're not, then reduce it to 1 day a week, even though the program says do it twice a week. Yeah. There is no one-size-fits-all approach for this stuff. You have to figure out what works for you individually. And what we do is work our butts off to provide a blueprint of the framework of what works, and then you have to through experimentation figure out what works for you.
And if you're that's what this group is great for that too, because you will get feedback. But the UMS online coaching group, that's what we've created that group for, because we help those guys basically design their own programs. They use our framework as a blueprint, and then they are building their own workouts and their own routines and their own programs. And that's the whole point behind that group. We have lots of new people in there. I want to give a couple of good shout outs. Remembering, guys, that we have our live group coaching call, weekly group coaching call tomorrow, straight after this show at 9:15. I know we made a mess of it last week. We got finished late on this show and then had a couple of phone calls and a couple of people walk in. Unfortunately, I say unfortunately, but fortunately, we're getting quite popular in this area. So we have a lot of people dropping into the gym who are wanting to sign up and things like that. And it's just us at the moment. We're about to get a manager at the gym so that we can not have to jump out of there straight away when people come in. Mm-hmm. But we mucked up the time last week. We're going to be on time tomorrow, 9:15, in the UMS online coaching group. Get your questions ready. We got a couple of people's videos to analyze, a couple of newbies who are posting their first workout videos that I want to give some cred to and some feedback to. And other than that, tomorrow we're going to be bringing this in for a landing, going really deep in how to deload for stretching, what happens, why to do it, how to do it, and sort of talk about where mobility training and routines like the 18-minute mobility or the 6-minute squat routine and things like that come into play, or the ultimate warm-up, our warm-ups we recommend people do as a mobility routine if they do nothing else, We're going to bring it all in for a landing tomorrow. We're very, very excited for the possibility that we launch this new program tomorrow. We're working our butts off in the back end to get all that done and produced. That's going to be called the Flexibility Blueprint. It's under a new name. It is essentially version 2.0 of the Mobility Masterclass. Sorry, it's the Flexibility Masterclass. Flexibility Masterclass. I got that wrong. It is the version 2. It is an evolution of the Mobility Masterclass, but we now have the names right, and we've been wanting to do this for about a year and a half, and we've been told by our marketing team it's just too big a nightmare to change the names now because those programs are so well known. But Rad and I,
going forward now,
we've had sleepless nights over this. We just feel like we're doing it wrong. And we've known that for years. So now we've finally rebranded them as the 18-minute mobility routine, and this will be the Flexibility Masterclass.
That's right.
Very exciting, guys. Very exciting. All right, that's it.
Have a great day, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow to wrap up this week of flexibility coaching.
Health is about performance, not just body image.
You better be willing to accept what you're going to have to do to get there.
We'll start focusing on movement goals, strength goals, flexibility goals.
When you nail that skill, it's there forever.
The body image goal doesn't get you that
It's
far.
the consistency and frequency that's going to get you there. It's not the intensity.
There's no shortcuts to mastery and movement. Destination doesn't change overnight, but your direction will.
The gym is not the place to beat up the body that you hate. It's the place to build the body that you love.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.
Hey, thanks for watching that video. If you liked it, consider subscribing to our channel and make sure you click the notification bell so you know when our weekly videos are uploaded. Now, the best thing for you to do if you want to stay connected with us and get free online coaching is to join our private Facebook group. It's called the UMS Movement Mastermind, and we go live daily where we answer our members' questions. It's very interactive because you can post questions while we're live and we interact with you on the show. You can also upload videos or pictures of yourself with any movements, any stretches, strength training movements, calisthenics, weightlifting, anything that you're struggling with, and we'll critique you, give you feedback, let you know how you can get better. It's a really valuable resource. It allows a lot of communication with us and also our senior tribe members. You'll get answers very, very quickly, and it's absolutely free. So jump on Facebook, search for UMS Movement Mastermind, and join now. Until next time, have a great day.